afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see you. And I love that I am not in the hot seat today, that my great friend Governor Doug Ducey is, and I'm so excited to be able to ask him some questions. But before I do, you all know about Generation Justice from yesterday. He signed no less than 7 different reforms for us, specifically saved some children we didn't even get to talk about, and it has been incredible. So would you join me?
Thank you, Darcy. I just want to say first to Lisa, thank you for the kind words, and I love that you pointed out some of the milestones and accomplishments that we have in Arizona, but it'd be remiss, I think, for any governor to say that you can do this alone. I'm blessed here in Arizona with an incredible legislature. I see the president of our Senate, Karen Fann. I imagine our Speaker of the House, Rusty Bowers, is here, and all the other members have been partners in all these good reforms, and they send me bills like the ones Darcy is bragging on that are very easy to sign, and we can have a great celebration around it. So I want to say thank you to them as well before we start.
All right, Governor, 2020 is 3 weeks away. And you might say that the roaring 20s are here again, at least in Arizona. So 4 years ago, as Lisa was saying, you inherited $1 billion deficit. Not only are we in the black, but Arizona now is the #1 inbound state in the country. Everyone is coming here. What is your secret sauce?
In my second state of the state, I was able to say I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my partner in growing Arizona's economy, and that's been California Governor Jerry Brown. This guy has been a force multiplier, and I do like to brag on our policies of lower taxes, less regulation, the fact that we actually balanced our budget, put additional dollars into K-12 education, gave a raise to our teachers, and did it while lowering and simplifying taxes. You saw Governor Walker speak very eloquently here earlier. There is a roadmap among Republican governors, and I think you can see that being applied across the country. I was fortunate to come into office, and the wonderful thing about being a governor is not only are you the chief executive, not only do you set the agenda and pick the people, you've got a very collegial relationship, and when I was able to come in as a rookie and Scott was a veteran, he was very generous with what he did and what could be reapplied, things that he would avoid, and better ways to have a transition. And that's something I've been an eager student of, and it's kind of odd now to be the veteran in the conference and have newcomers come in, but it's that same roadmap, and it's that healthy competition among the states. And we're grateful here in Arizona being out west. We want to protect and defend what we have here. We don't see a lot of that going on out west. California's been headed in this direction for some time, but most recently, our concern is we've seen this even happen in places like Colorado. So part of the battle cry for 2020 is to protect and defend Arizona and make certain that all these Californians that are moving here realize that they left California for a reason.
Okay, it was a wonderful day, and many of you will remember this. Opening up the Wall Street Journal to read, I quote, "Arizona's state motto is God enriches, but residents might want to thank Governor Doug Ducey and lawmakers too. They sainted him." And we've talked a lot about this at this ALEC conference, but Arizona became the first state to recognize out-of-state licenses, and it's for more than 40 occupations. You've heard that, cosmetologists all the way to surgeons. And my question for the governor is, this bill, unlike many other things that go through the legislature, this was on the streets. I mean, I went in for a haircut one day, and he's blown out my hair, and he's like, "Have you heard about this bill? These people are going to light your hair on fire if they're not licensed right." Everybody knew what was going on, all of these different professions. And my question is, how did you overcome the concerns that people had about this big change?
We wanted to free the blow dryers. We thought these people deserved the same freedom. And part of it was out of the frustration that we felt when you come into the governor's office. All the topics that you discussed on the campaign trail are not really what you have to deal with. You inherit, of course, that $1 billion budget deficit. You've got 43 agencies that report directly to you, 200 plus boards and commissions, and 35,000 state employees. We were able to, in the first couple years, get our arms around all of it, except for the boards and commissions. And they continued to be bullies, to push back and have this imperial posture, even though they're part of the executive branch. So what we wanted to do was to leapfrog them, to blow a big hole in this regulatory superstate that has grown not only at the federal level, but it exists even in a state like Arizona. And the idea was to come up with this universal recognition of an occupational license, meaning if you were in another state and you were certified and qualified as good enough to do the work there, being the fastest growing state in the nation, we wanted those people to be able to pack up a U-Haul truck, and when they cross that state line, they don't lose their skill and go to work and earn a living immediately. And there were some concerns that were put out there by the usual suspects who said that things were going to go awry or that we weren't protecting public health and public safety. But I think most people understand that a blow dryer is something that you see in every hotel room. I imagine it's in many homes, and it's something that doesn't need 1,000 hours of training, $18,000 of investment, and nearly 40 weeks of opportunity cost. So we used the blow dryers and kind of this dry bar phenomenon that was happening, but it's also been across the board. I was actually in an airport flying back to Arizona, and a guy came up to me and said, "I love the law that you passed on universal recognition. I imagine it doesn't apply to me." I said, "Well, what's your license?" And he said, "I'm a certified public accountant." I mean, that's something that's very highly regulated. And I actually didn't know the answer. I felt good. I was able to text Katie Fisher, who leads the legislative liaison, and she said, "You bet that's covered." And I was able to walk 3 rows over and say, "Welcome to Arizona." So now he's a full-time resident.
Wonderful. So some of the most significant movements for justice in American history, including, of course, the fight for civil rights, were fueled by college students and protests and demonstrations. But we've seen in recent years, not just in Arizona, but everywhere across the country, this proliferation of restrictions on free speech zones. In a lot of places, restrictions on free speech, and a lot of times they're called free speech zones. Places where students can speak or protest, but of course, these free speech zones do the opposite by confining political expression to a few places on campus, usually where there are no microphones or cameras. You've been a leader to restore free speech on campuses. Can you share a little bit about how you did that and what our reforms look like here?
Well, I just think this is so important. I'm someone who was the first in my family to graduate college. I was fortunate enough to go to Arizona State University, and I didn't yet have my political philosophy yet developed. And I'd like to go and see some of these different speakers on campus, and I was shocked at what I was seeing is the behavior of some people. And we're used to this at a place like Missouri, is a place like Berkeley, but to see it at places like Missouri or Middlebury and some of what are considered the most prestigious schools, we didn't want that to happen in the state of Arizona. Now, I'm blessed and lucky that I have 3 university presidents that agree with this. So part of it is culture and making sure that you have the leadership on campus that are going to make certain that this is a place where you are going to seek wisdom and knowledge as you see fit. But we also have schools of economic thought and leadership at Arizona State University. We have a freedom school at the University of Arizona. This is something that I was proud to help cut the ribbon with the university president, with Senator John Kyle, with George Will as a keynote speaker, and Harvey Mansfield, the conservative from Harvard, was there, and Bill Kristol and the Board of Regents, and there wasn't a protester to be found. And this is a place where people will not only go and study our founding documents, they'll also study the philosophy of Aristotle and the writings of Shakespeare, and it's a school that's just off to a great start, and they have wonderful speakers from across the board that come there with civil dialogue, and it's something that I wanted to see. I think it's something that's possible in all of our states, and let's let our young people, through the marketplace of ideas, find what are the best ideas. And never in the history of our country have we had a better case for what we believe in terms of freedom and the free enterprise system. But somehow that's being lost on campuses, it's being lost in high schools, and of course we see what the mainstream media is doing to it. That's not happening in Arizona, and it won't happen on our watch.
All right, so basically you've been sainted by the Wall Street Journal. You've done this universal licensing that everybody in the room wishes they could do. So we've had enough on your successes. Here's what we want to know. Okay, you are a big football and basketball fan, and you know that you win some and you lose some. Okay, so give us some hope. Tell this audience about a time that you flat out failed at something and what the next brass ring looks like for you.
So, as a football fan, allow me to quote Vince Lombardi, who says that he never lost a football game, he only ran out of time. And Darcy, I look at it this way. I am in the first year of my second term, and I'm term limited, which is somewhat liberating. I wake up every morning and say a silent prayer of thanks that my name's not going to be on a ballot in 2020. Yet I have a responsibility as the governor to make sure the people that I've been able to work with over the past 6 years at election time get over the finish line and can help protect and defend Arizona. So I do think that we've got a good list, an agenda, a roadmap that we ran on in 2014 as securing Arizona's future agenda that I ran for re-election on in 2018. There's more left to accomplish there, but I look at each year as we try to load that pipeline as full as we can with an action-oriented agenda that we can accomplish in that next legislative session. And we're going to have a great legislative session kicking off on Monday, January 13th, and the upcoming year. It's also going to be very quick legislative session. I think in 2015, we broke the record in Arizona's modern history for the fastest legislative session ever, and that's because we had to balance that budget with the $1 billion deficit. So I just said to everyone, there's no good news. We can't do anything. We're going to tighten the belt and fix this fisc here in the state of Arizona. Now we're in a much different position financially, but we're not going to go on a spending spree. We're going to be responsible. And to really look back and then say, what's a brass ring is not something I'm in the habit of doing, because I think of, it's amazing to me that I'm here sitting in this position just 5 short years removed from what was not only a financial crisis, but a constitutional crisis with our education system mired in years-long lawsuits. All of that is behind us now. Now we have an incredible amount of momentum. We have money in the bank. We have an incredible legislature. I'm a much wiser and smarter governor than I was 5 years ago, and I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't be able to get 3 or 4 times as much done in the next 3 years as we did in the last 5 years, and that's where my mind is right now.
Awesome. You can. Please applaud. Don't wait for the next question. Okay, so how are we on time, Lisa? We got 5 minutes, 3 minutes? Right here, 4. Okay. So when, Governor Ducey, you are celebrating these milestones, what kind of ice cream do you choose?
Well, I'm a chocolate guy, so I'm always chocolate. Maybe sometimes on the hotter days of summer I mix it up, but by and large chocolate with Kit Kats, Reese's peanut butter. The more you can mix in, the better.
Okay, that's
And at Cold Stone Creamery, by the way.
Always, always. All right, well, let's just do one last question. So I love the way that you answered that you are glad that there's a term limit, and you're thinking about setting up this state for the long haul and hopefully leaving it better than you found it and in a way that will be sustaining. So I want to just go back to the very first bill that you signed, the American Civics Act, which was also dear to my heart. And we've talked a lot about that. Lisa mentioned that, only a quarter of people in the United States even can tell you what the 3 different branches of government are. And there's a great worry that, of course, if we can't identify those things, how are we going to appreciate the checks and balances that are so necessary for our freedom? So tell us a little bit about the Civics Initiative, and do we have any information yet back on how it's helping our students?
Sure, so I want to touch on this a bit. This was the first law that we were able to pass, and I was proud of that, and I really got the idea. I was at a Joe Foss dinner in 2014 during a very heated primary campaign, and they had Charles Krauthammer on stage with Richard Dreyfuss. And they had a debate, and these 2 gentlemen didn't agree on anything. But at the end of the debate, they made a very spirited advocacy for American civics. And they said all of our arguments came from foundational documents, the Declaration, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers. And there was a model legislation that Joe Foss was talking about, and I had a campaign event the next day, and I just thought this made sense. And from a stage, I think I had 9 other opponents. At the time, I said, if you elect Doug Ducey, Arizona kids are going to graduate high school with knowledge of American history and civics, and they're going to have to pass the American Civics Act, or they won't have a diploma. And there's spontaneous applause, and you don't get a lot of spontaneous applause in these primaries when you're running. We were able to win on that. I was actually surprised other people just didn't embrace it and run alongside it. And I was somewhat shocked to hear that no other state had passed this. It was the first law we passed. We passed it on the Thursday of my first week. Since then, 31 other states have followed. And I don't know if any of you have taken this test. It's the same test that a new naturalized American citizen takes before they can be sworn in a ceremony. You won't even remember where you learned this. It wasn't in a civics class. It was just part of your education and your schooling and the teams that you were on and the family that you grew up in and the neighborhood. These are not difficult questions. How many branches of government are there? Who is the commander-in-chief? Who is the father of our country? It's like an easy 97%. There's one tough question. How many amendments are there? But once you commit that to memory, there's no tough questions.
How many are there?
There's 27. So, and if Scott Walker gets his way, there'll be 28. And it'll be a balanced budget amendment, which is a good idea. So to me, I think it's a really good first step. I think there's more that we can do on civics. We should think of it under the umbrella of citizenship. It's not only what our rights are, which so many of our young people seem to have a real handle on. It's what our responsibilities are as the inheritors of this great gift called the United States of America. That's the real theme behind civics, and I think that's the real challenge going forward in all the legislation and positive things that we're passing, that people understand how it ties to the foundation of what makes America such a special and unique place in the history of the world.
Please join me in thanking Governor Doug Ducey.